The switch room is not a stage. I keep trains from arguing with themselves, and most nights that's enough of a biography. My name is Eli. I work nights in the switch room under Addison Junction, where four lines reconsider their life choices every 2 minutes and iron pretends to be precise. If you've never seen a switch room, imagine the backstage of a city's heartbeat. Racks of relays that clack like patient metronomes, a mimic board lit with little green confessions, cable trays that hum a note I've learned to trust more than speeches. It smells like dust that has a schedule and coffee that doesn't. At home, there's Marco, who edits documentaries about people who aren't ready to be edited. He comes back from the studio with timelines in his head and kindness in his voice. On our refrigerator, we keep an index card with 4 rules written in thick marker. The first 3 were there when we moved in together. 1. No afters without names and minutes. 2. Compliments open no doors. 3. Hands belong to what they're holding. The fourth arrived after a maintenance tour last spring when a camera guy reached for my collar to help the shot. It reads, "The switch room is not a stage." People think my job is levers and romance, the noble choreography of wheels and promises. The truth is more boring and therefore more beautiful. It's discipline. It's numbers that don't shout. It's making a dozen small decisions at the exact moment they stop being optional, and then forgetting you did, because remembering would make you slow. Sometimes I think the city stays alive because 100 rooms like mine refuse to become interesting. When the transit authority turned 100, somebody far above my pay grade decided to celebrate by staging open tracks, station tour, trivia nights on the concourse, and a 10-minute live stream from the switch room so viewers could feel the choreography. That phrase tasted like marketing and old gum. Still, they were coming. My boss, Alvarez, tapped my console with a grin. "You're calm on camera," he said, "possibly because you hate it." I told him calm was a byproduct of agreeing with gravity, not a skill. The week before the event, I cleaned the panels with the cloth no one else touches and taped a yellow line on the floor at the radius where people stop being tolerable. I made little labels that said "No aria felicitiones" and stuck them near the mimic board because camera lenses love to steal more than they're owed. I walked the cable room and listened for a new hum and tried not to give the room a personality. Rooms don't want one. People force it on them. The crew showed up with soft shoes and optimistic smiles. Their front man was a host named Bennett whose voice knew how to sound like a friendly whistle even indoors. The producer, a woman named Rosa, had a clipboard and a posture that said she'd rather be useful than photogenic. 10 minutes, Bennett said. A taste of the magic. I told him magic had the night off. Discipline was covering. He laughed like he understood but planned to forget. We rehearsed once. No trains moved, just a camera learning where it wasn't allowed to be. I explained the rule of 3, picture, permission, proceed. I showed them a switch motor on the mimic board and how a single amber lamp could make a room bully you. I told them not to film the call roster or the circuit IDs or anything that would let a bright child plan a bad day. Transparency is where the camera stands, I said, not what it steals. Rosa wrote that down. Bennett said, "Love that," in the tone of a person who has loved too many slogans. The stream was scheduled for 21:30, right at the bend where inbound trains remember they live in a city and outbound trains pretend they're brave. The chat, I'm told, was full of hearts the color of waiting. Bennett started in with the patter. "We're here in the hidden brain of the subway." He asked how long a switch takes to throw. I said, "As long as it needs to be safe," which makes terrible TV and excellent trains. He asked how I keep calm. I said, "By refusing to be special." Then Bennett did what cameras ask men to do, rearrange each other. "You've got a little shine," he murmured, thumb already rising toward my cheek, toward the collar the camera hated. I moved 1 centimeter. His thumb met the kind of air that says this is a room for tools. The switch room is not a stage, I said. Hands belong to what they're holding. My hand held the release key. His hand found his pocket. Rosa, in my peripheral, gave me the smallest nod, thank you, or sorry, or both. On the mimic board, line C flickered a warning that meant a relay wanted attention. I acknowledged it without letting the camera think it mattered more than the system that contains it. I called the maintenance tech on the runner phone. He answered with the weary good humor of people who keep cities from falling over. We cleared it before it had time to become a story. The chat learned nothing except that nothing happened. You sleep better when nothing happens. We wrapped that first stream and they promised to be back at 23:00 for a night flavor. Alvarez leaned in the doorway with the grin of a man whose job tonight was to not be me. Handled, he said. You've got that 1 centimeter move down. It's maintenance, I said, like tightening a wire. He laughed, loud then quiet, the way electricians laugh when they're near a panel. Between streams, a train operator on line D radioed in with a door problem that wanted to be dramatic and then remembered manners. My hands became persuasion. The doors remembered they were doors. We sent him off with a new schedule and a voice that said we trusted him to follow it. I checked the time and thought of Marco, who would be leaving the studio soon with a ginger ale he doesn't really like and a story I will want to hear. He often sends me an empty glass emoji. I send him a wrench. The second crew arrived with an extra camera and the kind of excitement that belongs to people who haven't learned boredom's mercy. Bennett wanted a truth moment, his words about trust. People love seeing behind the scenes, he said. They love feeling like the city lets them in. We let them on, I said. Letting them in is a different verb. He smiled like that sentence had auditioned well. We went live again. I pointed to a switch motor on the mimic board and explained why it sounds like a polite hammer. I explained that the shortest distance between two places in a subway is usually a lie. I did not explain that my heart rate never gets to be special. The room has enough to do. Bennett asked if we could show a map closer just for the shot. I shook my head. Rosa saved us both with a cut to the relay rack, where the relays clicked like little apologies. And then, drama with opinions. On the camera feed, the chat went strange. Someone had posted a live location pin with a caption that made me feel watched by a person who had never earned the right. Moments later, two local creators slid under the chain at the far door, phones up, bodies confident in the way only borrowed confidence can be. One of them reached toward my shoulder to steady his behind the scenes. 1 centimeter saved us again. No, I said with the voice I keep for systems, not people. Back of the line. Rosa cut the feed so hard the room's hum felt louder. I called Alvarez on the ceiling speaker. He arrived with a face that said he'd rather be anyone else, and then did exactly what was necessary. The creators apologized with the careful smiles of people who need their faces for rent. We escorted them out with the bored efficiency of a city that has practiced this since glass was invented. The chat lit up with arguments about access. The switches kept time. 2 days later, communications set up a debrief in a conference room with a view of nothing. Around the table, me, Rosa, a deputy commissioner with a tie that wanted to be a headline, and Bennett, who had the decent look of a man braced for a lesson. The deputy said harmonize 3 times like it could pay our salaries. Bennett opened his hands. I confused frame and lock, he said. I thought I was helping people in. I was actually making your room pretend to be something it's not. Rooms don't pretend, I said. People do. Rosa proposed printing a line on every event badge. The switch room is not a stage. I asked for a second line. Hands belong to what they're holding. We made 3 small decisions that felt like large ones. A 1-meter tape line marked on the floor of any control room that allows cameras. A camera position map that says where you may stand, not just where you may not. And a promise every crew speaks on mic before rolling. what they will not show. Make the no part of the rehearsal, Rosa said. Bennett wrote it down like he meant it. A week later, a kid showed up at the loading dock with a folded paper and the respectful clumsiness of someone trying to find a better version of himself. "Can I read something?" he asked. Not on camera. He read 3 sentences about the first time his father took him to the end of a platform to watch trains arrive, and how he'd imagined them as giant breathing things with places to be and no need for him. He left the paper on the mimic board. I keep it under the index card now, because some rules are better with a story sitting on them. If you want a moral, I can't help you. If you want a checklist, I have those. Wipe glass, count clicks, say no before you need to, don't let a camera teach the room what it is. The older I get, the more a boundary feels like kindness dressed for work. We pretend no is about control. It's actually about not needing bravery later. Back home, after the debrief, Marco added a 5th line to the card. His crew needed it as much as mine. 5. Thank the person who keeps the door before the person who brings the light. He wrote it small because we planned to say it often. We ate leftover noodles on the couch with the TV off and told each other the boring parts of our day until they became the parts that mattered. Sometimes I replay that thumb meeting air, not out of triumph, but because it belongs in the file labeled proof that quiet prevents theater. Sometimes I think about the night a breaker failed, and the relays remembered their promise anyway. Sometimes I think about the operator on line F who sings the station names when spirits are low, and who drops the melody when the camera is near. All those thoughts live in the same drawer as the tape measure, and the felt pen and the spare cloth. Tools against spectacle. I haven't told you about the time a stalled train made a rumor out of us, and the rumor died of boredom because we refused to feed it. I haven't told you about Alvarez, who writes thank you notes to quiet relays. I haven't told you about Rosa's crew, who sent us a signed printout of the badge with the line we wrote and a note. Thanks for teaching behind the scenes where to stand. That printout is taped above the board now, next to the fan that never admits it's tired. If you ever ride through Addison Junction and the car pauses a breath longer than patience likes, don't get dramatic on its behalf. Look out the window and see the room you can't see. We're down here counting the clicks and keeping the lane open and moving 1 centimeter when we must. If you find yourself at an open house and feel the itch to fix my collar for the shot, watch the small motion, the small smile, and remember the sentence we printed on the badge and wrote on the floor and taped to the fridge. The switch room is not a stage. The train will still arrive. That's the only applause we need.